So our next guest today is no stranger to the camera. He spent 20 years at KABB's Fox News First. And today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Ernie Zuniga.
Thank you very much. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you today?
You're right. I do enjoy me a camera, but more importantly, I enjoy the conversation.
Yes,
so I'm
absolutely,
doing good.
absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining us on our second Taco Talk.
Awesome.
You know, we are so thrilled to have you here. I know when Candace connected us, I was just like, oh my God, let's do it. Let's do it.
She's amazing. She tells me, gives me an opportunity. I'm like, just let me know when and where, and if there's tacos involved, even better.
There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so getting right on into it, I gotta go with the juicy question.
Okay.
All right, so last taco order, are you coming to Mia's or are you going somewhere else? And if so, what tacos are you grabbing?
The last taco order, well, I will tell you, truthfully, it's Mia's is definitely in the rotation. There's a Bill Miller by my house, and it's just convenient in terms of coming and going from the house. So a lot of times I'll stop by there, and my wife and I like to get some tacos from there as well.
I love Bill Miller's tacos.
Yeah.
It's one of those sleeper
I
spots.
totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Especially the potato and eggs.
Yeah, so I'm a bacon, egg, potato. That's usually my go-to taco there, but so it's a toss-up usually between those two places.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, I got to say, on the city's west side, one of my go-to spots has to be Rita's.
Okay.
Rita's Taco.
Okay.
That's one of my go-to spots.
Beautiful.
And then on this kind of Southtown area, I got to say either Eddie's or Panchitos. Those are
Okay.
my two go-to spots.
Okay.
I love those.
I am trying to branch out more and try different places, and I love recommendations like that because you obviously know what you're talking about. So
Highly recommend.
good.
Recommend.
I think our guy's coming.
Perfect.
I think it's taco time, senor. Taco time.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Go. Well, I'm gonna have one bacon, egg, potato.
Bacon, egg, and potato?
With crispy bacon, and one bean and bacon, crispy bacon.
No cheese.
No
Bean and
cheese.
bacon.
Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and do I'll do a crispy bean and bacon also.
Okay.
And I'll also go ahead and do, I'll go ahead and try I'll try your chorizo egg and bean.
Chorizo and bean.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Very
Thank you,
good.
thank you.
Do I have the menu?
Yeah, go for it, Feel free to.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, chorizo, bean and bacon,
Yes.
bean and bacon, and potato, egg and bacon.
I don't know how you remember that, but yes, that's I don't know how they always do that.
Skill.
Yeah, seriously.
It's an untapped skill.
Yes, yeah.
I guess just getting right on into it, you've spent over 20 years within the business. You've been 17 years on air, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so total in the business, I'm probably closer to 30 years because
okay.
I'm from Victoria.
Yes,
In a couple
yes.
hours. So I started in teeny tiny market of Victoria in the 90s.
Oh wow, okay.
And just working my way up from production. I think my first ever job was like a weekend audio
Okay.
technician.
Sweet.
And back then we had carts. You'd play the theme song to the newscast on a cart, and you'd ride the levels and everything on the board and all that kind of stuff. And then I worked my way up, and at the time I wanted to be a sportscaster.
Right.
Ever since I was like 10 years old, that's all I wanted to do. I couldn't really play sports very well, so I was like, let me talk about it. And I had a great mentor there in Victoria who's still on the air in Victoria to this day. He just celebrated 40 years there.
Wow.
And he's definitely somebody that I look up to. And long story short, I was able to work my way up to the sports anchor desk there in the late 90s. And then I was able to, once I finished college, then I came here to San Antonio and began the first of two stints here at Fox San Antonio.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there like a specific interview that kind of stood out to you that's been more memorable or something that you think is like career defining in your opinion?
Oh, wow. Man, I'd have to think about that. But I was just reminiscing with somebody the other day because, when I was a sportscaster, that used to be like a 1 or 2 p.m. start time to your day, and you
Right.
work till 10 or 11 o'clock at night because most of the sports happen in the late part of the day.
Right.
But I came in to San Antonio in April of '99, just in time for the Spurs to begin their playoff run. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Just in time for the Spurs to begin their playoff run, and of course
wow.
they eventually won their first title in
Thank
June
you.
of '99. Very
Thank you.
good.
Appreciate that.
I think we're good for now.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
That's amazing.
So yeah, literally one of my first assignments coming into San Antonio is to cover this team. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so
Right,
much.
habanero and green sauce. Okay.
All the salsas. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you.
Tim Duncan was in his second year at the time.
Oh wow.
David Robinson, Avery Johnson, Sean Elliott. So I'm coming in, and I'm just a kid. I'm 23 years old.
Right.
A kid, and getting to cover my childhood team.
Right.
Winning the
NBA championship.
NBA championship. I mean, it's just like, where do you go from there? But no, I mean, it's just been amazing. I guess I've interviewed a few celebrities, if you will, over the years. But really, probably some of my favorite conversations are with people who are not household names.
Right.
They're just ordinary people who have unbelievable stories. I just, no matter how old I am or I've gotten or all the years that I've been in, I still enjoy just this.
Yeah, face to face.
Even with the evolution of technology and smartphones and digital and all that,
Absolutely.
There's still, to me, something about this.
Absolutely. So I guess without further ado, let's
Okay.
go ahead and dig onto these tacos. Dig on in.
Excellent. All right.
By recommendation
No
of
pressure.
Mr. Mr. Ernie, so I gotta see how these go. Crispy bacon.
Has to be.
Crispy bacon.
Reminds me, takes me back to my grandmother, my abuelita. So my parents grew up in Del Rio. My grandmother was a widow for many, many years of my life, but she lived in a teeny tiny house, a 70-year-old house on the poorest side of Del Rio. I didn't know any better, but we would go visit her every year, and that woman could cook. I mean, she could cook. And you're using the lard and the bacon fat,
Right,
everything.
right.
And it's a tiny house, and sometimes we'd sleep on the floor, we'd sleep on the couch, whatever. 1 2-bedroom little house. And it was so small, but man, you wake up in the morning and you are slapped in the face with that smell, unmistakable smell of the refried beans and the bacon and everything. And she, homemade tortillas, with just grabbing them by hand, as only a Mexican grandmother would
would.
do. It's the best. It's just the best. And so whenever possible, I'll get me a bean and bacon, and it's not, respectfully, it's not quite like my grandmother's, but it's close enough.
So, we talked about your interview your people who you have interviewed,
Right.
That have really resonated with you, local community, things like that. Given that it is Hispanic Heritage Month,
Yes.
Is there one specific, I guess, memory that you have interviewing maybe a family, maybe somebody within that realm that really resonated with you and spoke to the Hispanic heritage?
Well, it's interesting you said that. We were just talking about Del Rio, and this is completely coincidental. That house that I was just telling you about, my grandmother, was completely lost in 1998.
Okay.
It was a massive 100-year flood.
Wow.
So my grandmother's house, and this is in Del Rio, by the way, poorest part of Del Rio, just, 50, 60 steps away from San Felipe Creek. So if you know kind of the landscape of that area, not a lot was happening there at the time. Again, I didn't know any better. I mean, it was amazing to me.
Right.
But she had 7 feet of water in her tiny house in 1998, and it was destroyed. And thankfully, she was not there at the house that night and lived years after the flood. But I went. I was a teeny tiny KABB reporter at the time in Little Victoria, and I got the okay to drive to Del Rio and take a camera by myself in a one-man band with a giant power pack, and the tapes were like this big. And I went and walked the neighborhood. This is, what is it now, 1998, so it's been, about, 26 years ago.
Just about, yeah.
Walked that neighborhood, and literally, I interviewed my uncle and a couple of, family friends who might as well be family, who had just lost everything. And people had died in that neighborhood in the flood. And it was just so surreal for me to be there, walking in the house, my grandmother's house, just covered in mud, and to see so many of the personal things that she had lost and things like that. Again, she was fine, but the house, was demolished and was not livable, and that entire neighborhood was basically lost. And that was just such a thing that I'll never be able to get that out of my head, just kind of the devastation and just knowing how it impacted those people. So, I mean, that's something that comes to mind. And then, boy, just trying to think. I mean, it's just some of the memories from over the years in my news career, covering the freeze in 2021.
Right.
I had to work. I worked that week.
Right,
My family was home, not too far from where we are right now, with no power. There's 50 degrees in our house or whatever, and we had a little bit of firewood and everything. But I had to leave and then go spend the night at a hotel by the TV station.
Right.
Which then lost power itself. So I would drive back and forth as much as I could. I mean, it was terrible on the roads.
What was that drive like? I mean,
I hit a curb really good, skidding on the ice one time.
Oh man.
But that's usually a 18 minute drive. Mm-hmm. It took me, I think, between 45 minutes and an hour and a half to get home. But I had to come home and check on my family, and then I'd have to turn around and go right back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy because while most everybody was home, rightfully so, just kind of hunkering down, we were on the air all the time and trying to report those things. Obviously, we were on the air when Uvalde happened, and that, again, Uvalde is on the way to Del Rio, so
right.
I know that community.
Right.
I had family at the time that lived there in Del Rio and worked within the school district. And, a couple years later, it still resonates with me. And having to tell those stories. And I tell people that stretch from, I think, I kind of started like Hurricane Harvey in 17. Mm-hmm. Harvey hit the coast. Right. I'm from Victoria. We went down to Victoria, took food and supplies to people down there in my hometown. My wife has family from Port Lavaca. I mean, all of that, so much of that was devastated and decimated and everything. So those kinds of stories, and then you go into COVID.
Right.
Obviously, I did a week worth of shows from my house, wearing shorts and barefoot, right?
Wow.
But I had a suit on from the waist up,
yeah.
and so it's just so surreal to think about that stretch from like 2017 Harvey, all the way through, when I left last year in 23, I left at about the 1 year anniversary of Uvalde, and I mean, it was just, man, we as a community went through a lot. Man, I just look back on that time and think, man, how did we get through that? I mean, there was just that's a heavy time for a good solid 6-7 years of just stuff. And
nonstop.
But I mean, it was an honor to be a part of that in terms of just being able to tell those stories, and you'll always have that kind of looking back on those broadcasts or whatever as kind of like a memory. But it wasn't all bad, But I mean, we had we came back, if you will, as a city, and Fiesta came back, and the Spurs got Wemby, and I'm sure I'm leaving out a few other amazing things that happened. You had the Tricentennial, was it, in 2018? And,
right.
Some other things, but just what a remarkable time.
Amazing time. Now, I know you talked about, telling those stories and missing that. For those of you all who don't know, Ernie actually has his Facebook Live show,
right?
Pickup Lines.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
How did that come to fruition?
Kind of crazy. And I wish I could sit here and say, yes, I planned this. This is exactly how I thought it was going to go. But about 6 years ago in 2018, because I worked mornings all those years, I was never home in the morning and take my kids to school. My wife did all of that.
Right.
God bless her. But then that meant I was home in the afternoons to pick them up. So I would always pick them up from school. I have twins and an older daughter. My twins were in elementary school 6 years ago. And because the traffic and the parking was so bad, I would get to the campus like 45 minutes early so you can get a decent spot and wait for them to get out. And I would just sit there, day after day, Monday through Friday, just like, man, what am I going to do with all this idle time? I'm literally parked in the parking lot just waiting. like, I can read, I can watch YouTube videos, I can listen to music, I can whatever. And Facebook Live, we used it a lot when I was on the news, doing commercials. Viewers always loved that, kind of that behind the scenes, if you will. And so one day, I just grabbed my phone and I just put it up on the dashboard of I had a little bitty Mazda SUV back then. And I was probably dressed in like shorts and a Spurs t-shirt, like nothing glamorous. And I turned it on and was not expecting anything, had no expectations, but I looked and I was like, on Facebook Live, you can see the number of people that are watching.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that's a pretty big number. Like, that's a lot of people are watching this at
pretty interesting
2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday or whatever, and I'm dressed like, my dad clothes on and everything. Okay, so nothing planned. We're just talking, right, about whatever's happening that day.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's tacos, maybe it's the Spurs, maybe it's weather, maybe it's fiesta, maybe it's whatever. All right, so I pick up my kids and then I move on. All right, so a few days later, I come back, I try it again. Good size audience again. And I'm like, man, what's going on here? So did it a few more times. And what I started to realize it was that shared common experience. That, it's a lot of the audience is these other parents who are literally doing the exact same thing I'm doing. They're sitting in their car. And this is all over the country. I've had viewers all over the country. And they're sitting there doing their thing or picking up their kids from school and watching. My wife got furloughed from her job in 2019, or around the pandemic time, 2020. She came into the car with me, and then we did the same thing. And then the audience grew even more.
Wow.
But now we're talking about parenting and marriage, nothing too personal or whatever, but just she brought a complete new element to the whole thing. I knew I had something for sure when we went out in public. I'm used to getting recognized because I've been on the air for so long and people are so nice and they will recognize me or say hello. My wife started getting recognized by name. Her name is Tammy, and people would be like, hey, Tammy. And they would always say, when are you going to do that thing in the car again? They would always call it that thing in the car, that thing in the car. And so that's what I told my wife. I was like, well, one, we got to keep doing this. And I said, two, I can't call it the thing in the car, right? I said, you know what? This is the only show I know of on earth that's live that broadcasts from a real pickup line at a real school. And I said, so I'm going to call it Pickup Lines.
It's an amazing title.
Amazing title. I grew up, and a few people, of course, thought it was a dating show right away, and they're like, what, are you trying to pick up women or something in the parking lot of the middle school? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm happily married, thank you. I'm good to go. But I grew up, I'm obviously older than you, but I grew up with like Larry King and The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and whatever, Letterman, or you name it, 60 Minutes, these long form interviews.
Right.
I think Howard Stern is a great interviewer, and you just sit there and it's long. Whereas what I did at the TV station on the morning show all those years, I did thousands of interviews on the morning show, but they were always 3 or 4 minutes long.
Right.
And how much, and I know why, obviously they had to be that long, but what can you really say in 3 minutes?
Yeah.
When I spend 20 seconds introducing you and saying, oh, well, welcome to the show, thanks for being here, good morning. And then 20 seconds at the end saying, thanks so much for being here, here's the website, let's go to weather now. Then you get 2.5 minutes, whatever, to say.
Takes the time away from it.
It's really hard to tell any story in that length of time. And you've got cameras, and where do I look? And the lights are in your face, and people are staring at you, and the producer's in my ear. I loved it, by the way. But Pickup Lines, what I like about the car format, what I think people like about it, is everybody knows what it's like to sit in a car.
Right. It's raw.
And have a conversation. It's not like James Corden. We're not carpool karaoke. We're not singing. It's not like Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars with Coffee, because it's not about necessarily the car, and we're not necessarily telling jokes, and we're not driving either.
Right.
The car is stationary, and I really just want to focus on the conversation. And what I have found is I have personalities, and I have public figures on, and I have small business owners, but what I've really found is nonprofits. Nonprofits can come on, have their executive director or their CEO, and I'm able to monetize it. Obviously, this is my full-time job, and I support my family with this. But, marketing, they have a small marketing budget, and I'm not asking for a ton, so let's help each other out.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed with a nice-sized audience that's been so supportive to me over the years. and it fulfills that itch, that it scratches that itch that I have to talk to people and tell stories, right? And it forces me now, I'm not at the TV station anymore, so I literally get out and come to wherever you are. And so it puts me in that environment where I can learn about what it is you do. Instead of you coming to the TV station, now I'm coming to you wherever you are. And I can see it and hear it and experience it with my own senses, if you will. And I absolutely love it. I would do the show every day if I could. Like if I could physically do it, I would do it every day. It's been an amazing. The Pickup Lines has been amazing so far.
That's beautiful. I caught a couple of episodes, you know, kind of going through your profile and, really trying to like dig into it a little bit. And yeah, it's interesting, you know. I know going off of the whole, you know, nonprofits thing like that. Your work with El Rey Feo Foundation. You know, it's been a while since you've worked with them, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you're still in touch with them or if you're still doing anything with them.
As a matter of fact, just this week we were at St. Philip's. I wore the uniform one more time, that white cream-colored Rey Feo uniform. So I was on the court for this past cycle of Fiesta for 2024. Rey Feo was John McFadden. We raised a record $1.5 million for scholarships.
Wow.
So in August, we were at Incarnate Word, and we handed out dozens and dozens of scholarships to kids who were in 2-year and 4-year college degree plans, right? And then they took that money and they went off to college. Just this past week, we were at St. Philip's College because we did something new this year. We took, I believe it was $100,000 for the fall semester and $100,000 for next spring, and devoted that toward scholarships for trade school students. And obviously St. Philip's has, you know, it's great.
Amazing trade
great
school.
trade school.
Yeah.
And that was great to be there and to hand out those scholarships to those kids because I think for far too long the trade schools were either ignored or they just weren't included, if you will, in the scholarship giving. And who among us doesn't know somebody who has had an amazing, successful life and run as a contractor, or you know, the person that repairs your whatever, you know, went to a trade school. And so now, thankfully, I'm so thrilled that these kids are getting some love and some money.
All right, so my last couple of questions that I just want to run through.
Yeah, let's do it.
You've been on the air or been within the business for a long time. Is there something that you miss specifically and something that you don't miss at all?
Yes and yes. I definitely miss the camaraderie of being in the studio.
Right.
And that adrenaline of the live element where, you know, they count you down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you go. And then and the producer's talking to you, and this is happening, and then there's breaking news, and you got to pivot, and this is happening, or maybe something national is happening, and I do miss that, right? I was telling somebody the other day, I haven't been able to replicate that yet. Plus, I used to tell people, if you're, you know, I would wake up at 2:30 in the morning, which is what I don't miss, by the way.
Yeah.
But I would say, if you're going to wake up at 2:30 in the morning and go to work, then you better love what you do, and you better be able to tolerate the people you do it with. Because, as you know, when you're on a news desk, I was on the air 5 hours a day, and I had female co-anchors, and we would literally sit within stand within 2 feet of each other.
Right.
So we're almost in each other's personal space. So like, you better get along with the person and the meteorologist is over here too. And so some of my best friends, and they'll be lifelong friends for sure. But I do miss that, you know, the craziness of that crazy hour, you know, being on the air for 4 hours, and it, you know, just some of the crazy things that happened and the spontaneity and all that. I do miss that.
All right, so last question.
Yes.
I think this is more for me, but I mean, I'm hoping that the viewers can get something out of this. You know, being that I'm fairly new into the business, what is something that you can, you know, share with me, piece of advice that you wish somebody had shared with you, and specifically to being a Latino within this business? You know, what is something that you feel you wish somebody shared with you?
Well, I wish when I was younger, I would have learned Spanish. I'm not fluent, and I'm not proud of that. I'm working on it, and my late mother, God bless her, was a Spanish teacher, and I have no excuses, absolutely none. And so, God willing, I'm going to get there one day. Entiendo mucho. In other words, I understand a lot.
Yeah.
But speaking it, I still get, I get in my own head sometimes about speaking it and being self-conscious about making sure I do it right, and I don't. So that's one thing that if I could do it over again, I wish I would have been able to do that, for sure.
I personally also am a no sabo kid, so I do fall within that. I do
Right.
understand Spanish. I do have a pretty good understanding of
Yeah.
it. I cannot speak it and I cannot write it, and a lot of people give me some push
I get it.
for that.
I get
so,
it. I get it.
You're definitely gonna make my mom happy on
We'll
that.
get
front,
there,
but
though. We'll get
yes,
there.
We will. We
All
will.
right.
But this has been Taco Talk, episode number 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.